when the non-natives are fishing, I don't see them sitting there at the wharves and boarding all their boats.
Tonight, a Mi'kmaq community has launched their food, social, and ceremonial lobster fishery. But will the season remain conflict-free?
So we're always affected by what happens to the water from these tailings ponds, but we have very, very little influence or opportunity to participate in any decision-making.
Plus, a grassroots Indigenous organization is ringing the alarm over what they believe is an impending human rights crime. And an emotional win as Nunavut claims its first ever gold medal at the Canada Summer Games. Good evening, Tansei, and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Southwestern Nova Scotia has one of the most lucrative lobster areas, and the Mi'kmaq community has launched their food, social, and ceremonial lobster fishery using their own management plan while rejecting the plan from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. As Angel Moore reports, the harvest is conflict-free on the waters for now.
Cheyenne Francis dropped 5 lobster traps during the evening in St. Mary's Bay when the tide was high, the first day of the Sabaganagati First Nations food, social, and ceremonial fishery season. Francis is following her community's management plan and not the Department of Fisheries and Oceans.
You know, not just what my grandparents, my dad taught me, and, you know, this stuff that, you know, it's not just teaching them, but also, you know, the generations to come.
Each member of Sabaganagati can catch up to 40 marketable lobsters per trap per day, and the catch must be reported according to the community plan. Earlier in the day, fisheries officers made their presence known. Francis says that is harassment.
When the non-natives are fishing, I don't see them sitting there at the wharves and boarding all their boats when they don't have permission to.
The catch is used for food, social, and ceremonial purposes and cannot be sold. Francis says her catch will provide a feast for a sweat and feed her crew and community members. Francis expects DFO officers will haul up her traps since she's not following their procedure, but she will keep on harvesting.
Put more out there. Like I said, you can't stop us. We're just going to keep going. Like, that's not in us.
More Mi'kmaq fishers are expected to arrive here this week and launch their boats. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Saulnieville Wharf, Nova Scotia.
Ontario's recently re-elected Ford government released its speech from the throne this week, and the key part of the government's economic plan is the development of what is known as the Ring of Fire in the northern part of the province. But First Nations critics say the government needs to have a much more inclusive approach when it comes to this development. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Part of Ontario Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell's speech was the province's economic plan to get in on the growing electric vehicle market, which means access to such minerals as nickel, cobalt, and lithium.
Recognizing the unprecedented potential, the province has released its critical minerals strategy, a 5-year blueprint to better connect mines and minerals in the north with the manufacturing might in the south, including Ontario's growing electric vehicle and battery manufacturing capacity. The cornerstone of this strategy is found in the Ring of Fire.
In its own speech, the Progressive Conservatives say they have already begun consultations with 2 First Nations in the area, but Northern NDP MPP Saul Mamakwa says they are going to have to do a lot better than that.
We call it the corridor of prosperity. It's a corridor of oppression and colonialism. That's what they're doing because they're pretty much dividing and conquer approach, and that's what colonizers do, and that they're doing that same approach.
Anishinaabe Nation Grand Council Chief Reg Neganobi agrees and says he was hoping for a more inclusive approach by the government in the speech.
Talks about opening up the Ring of Fire, connecting the north with the south for minerals, and then development in terms of manufacturing those minerals. But again, they're skipping over the whole area in between, where they're going to have to develop more transportation, more infrastructure, which is the Anishinaabe territory.
Mamakway says the government will need to take its duty to consult obligations in the area more seriously, which means accounting for the true cost of development.
If you're going to change the ways of life of the people in those traditional territories, there's a cost to it. You know, what is the cost of our way of life? You know, when we talk about languages, identity, when we talk about, the way we do things, our history.
And Chief Neganobi adds local First Nations will need to be properly compensated for any development costs.
Well, they need to consult with the treaty and rights holders, right? Like the Robinson-Huron, Robinson-Superior treaties are in that area. The Williams Treaty, you're going to be transporting across all those corridors. And of course, you have to interact and, establish a relationship with them and kind of compensate them for the increased transportation that's going to be coming through their areas.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
An Indigenous grassroots organization is raising awareness on what they call a potential international human rights crime. They're meeting with Northerners who live downstream of the oil sands. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs explains their approach and the current situation in the watershed.
An Indigenous environmental nonprofit is sounding the alarm, opposing the dumping of treated tailings left over from oil sands production into the Athabasca River. Jessie Cardinal is from the Cree Métis community of Kikino in northern Alberta. As the executive director of Keepers of the Water, she's informing leaders at the Dene National Assembly on the protection of water downstream of the oil sands.
The Alberta government and the corporations are saying that it's safe to dump the tailings. We have a science team that is taking the corporation's information, their science information, reading it, understanding it, deciphering it to understand it's not safe. There's still saline, high levels of saline, and something called naphthenic acid.
It's what Cardinal considers mass misinformation to the public by industry and government.
Naphthenic acid is cancer-causing. It affects hormones in people and it affects hormones in animals. And so saline, any level of saline in fresh water, it's like salt. It's like putting salt in water. It raises the temperature of the water. Water has to be cold for fish to live in, and water has to be cold for it to remain fresh for us to drink it.
The potential treated tailings will flow through Dene territory before emptying into the Arctic Ocean. Daniel Tetzelli of the Dene Métis community of Fort Good Hope along the Decho is also sharing the message as the NWT outreach manager for Keepers of the Water.
We're downstream, so we're always affected by what happens to the water from these tailings ponds, but we have very, very little influence or opportunity to participate in any decision making about what happens around these tailings ponds. Most of the activity there is under provincial jurisdiction, so it's the government of Alberta, and they obviously are not going to come to us to see what we think or to discuss our rights.
Keepers of the Water also say Canada has not obtained the free, prior and informed consent of Indigenous Northerners, a legal requirement from the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. Tetzelli says as the feds close in to release their formal discussion documents and draft regulations by the end of this year, the voice of opposition must get to Ottawa.
Assuming that these regulations get drafted and passed, the release of treated tailings could begin as early as 2025. So there is a few years, but the longer this process goes without people pushing back on it and getting their messages out there, the more difficult it's going to be to actually stop these regulations getting on the book and legalizing the release of these toxic tailings into the watershed.
Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Willowday.
For 4 years, the family of Cindy Martin have been searching for her after she went missing in northern BC. They now have tragic news. According to the family's social media post, Cindy Martin's remains were found. She had been missing from the town of Hazelton since December of 2018. Martin was a youth worker and an MMIWG advocate before vanishing. Her family actively raised awareness of her disappearance and offered a reward hoping for her safe return. Earlier this week, they were notified by the BC coroner and are now taking time to process the news. We will have more on this story soon. All right, we need to step aside for a short break. Still ahead, Yukon's Coroner Service is reporting a worrisome number of drug-related deaths in the territory. Welcome back. Yukon's Coroner Service is launching an inquest after 2 women died from illicit drug use at a shelter in Whitehorse earlier this year. As our reporter Sarah Connors tells us, the service is also reporting a worrisome number of drug-related deaths in the territory.
In January, 2 women died at the Whitehorse Emergency Shelter due to toxic illicit drugs. Now, Yukon's Chief Coroner Heather Jones has ordered an inquest into their deaths. 34-year-old Miranda Charlie and 35-year-old Cassandra Warville died at the government-run shelter on January 19th. Both women were from the Vuntut-Gwitchin First Nation and Old Crow, Yukon. Charlie's family previously told APTN she died from an opioid overdose. It's not yet known when the inquest will take place. The Yukon Coroner Service is also releasing new statistics about drug-related deaths in the territory. Since January 1st of this year, 17 people died in Yukon due to toxic illicit drugs. That number closely follows 2021's record-setting number of 25 drug-related deaths. Opioids in the form of fentanyl were present in 14 of this year's deaths. 12 of the 17 people, or 71%, were First Nation citizens. Since April 2016, there have been 71 opioid-related deaths in the territory. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
An annual Winnipeg concert to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is returning this weekend. The No Stone Unturned event began as a way to raise money to help with the search for Claudette Osborne Tayo, who went missing in July of 2008. The event has gone virtual in recent years due to the pandemic. For more, we're joined by organizer and family member Bernadette Smith. Bernadette, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, can you tell us a bit about how the event came to be for those who are a little unfamiliar with the No Stone Unturned concert?
So this is our 14th year. In 2008, my sister Claudette Osborne went missing. And at that time, there was no kind of community support. And we really wanted to bring community together to really help support those families who are going through this, but also really to help connect people to the issue. We felt like people who weren't directly connected weren't, involved in the issue. They didn't know about missing and murdered Indigenous women. And, there's a large proportionate number that were, had gone missing or murdered in Canada. We had a man by the name of Hector Mino, who was from my sister's community, Norway House Cree Nation, who came forward that was a musician, and he wanted to do a benefit concert to raise some reward dollars towards a reward for my sister. So we raised about $10,000, nobody came forward, and we've just continued it in honor of her every year, but also to help support those families who are grieving.
And like so many things, the pandemic somewhat sidelined the event for the past few years. So what can people expect this year?
Well, we have a full lineup. We are never short of entertainment. People in this province, in this city, really love to support the community. So we have entertainment from 1 to 11 p.m. We have Hector Mino opening up the show. We have up-and-coming artists that are from the community, like Ivy Venin, Gator Bulio, Kristen McKay, who's actually from my community of Pine Creek, We have seaweed that's closing the show. And then we have family activities all day. So we have 4 bouncers going, we have popcorn, ice cone machines, we have several field games. We actually have a basketball clinic that's being put on by Uzoma Asaguera and Daniel Halego, who both played for the University of Winnipeg, Westman.
Well, it certainly sounds like a lot of activities and should be a lot of fun from everything you just said. And you're now an NDP member of the Legislative Assembly in Manitoba. Why is it still important for you to hold this event with everything that you have going on?
Well, we have women and men, still continuing to go missing and murdered. We had a national inquiry. We have 231 calls that we need to get those into place and tangible actions. So this is really a way for us to stand together united against the violence that's happening in our community, not only here in Winnipeg or Manitoba, but across Canada and really across the country. And we need more people. It's going to take a shift in society for this to change and for us to get back to that community of caring and sharing and taking care of one another. And this is a way for us to come together and to stand united and really say to not only our governments, provincial, municipal, and federal, but also to our community that this is something that, we care about each other. We're all humans, and we all need to take care of one another. So I'm looking forward to seeing lots of people out standing united and supporting one another and really, signaling that this needs to stop and that we are here together to stop this from happening to one another.
All right, Bernadette, we'll have to leave it there, but we certainly appreciate you taking a few minutes to explain what's going on this weekend. Again, certainly sounds like there's going to be a lot and a lot of fun as well, so appreciate it, and thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me.
Time for one final break, but when we come back, getting young people back on the land is how some elders in Saskatchewan hope to avoid losing them to drug use.
For a while, I felt ashamed of where I was born. But as I grew older, I realized that I had to come back to here I am.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Gordon captured this close-up shot of a woodpecker in Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's a nice looking bird right there. Thank you for sharing. If you want to be featured as our photo of the day, email your shots to share@aptn.ca along with a description and location. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. We start over on the East Coast at 25 at a mix of sun and cloud in Charlottetown and 27 in Halifax. 23 in rain in Happy Valley Goose Bay and 22 in rain in Cartwright. 21 in rain in Gaspé and 22 in Quebec City. 23 in sunshine in Sarnia and 22 in sun in North Bay. 24 in Timmins and 24 in Sioux Lookout. 27 in showers in Churchill and 24 in Norway House. 23 in Barons River and 27 in Dauphin. 31 in Regina and 30 in North Battleford. 20 degrees and rain in La Ronge and 19 in Uranium City. Moving west to 21 in Fort Chipewyan and 24 in Peace River. 27 in Edmonton and 34 in Medicine Hat. 25 degrees in Campbell River and 27 in Bella Coola. 18 in Sandspit and 26 in Fort Nelson. 22 in Clear and Beaver Creek and 19 in Rock River. Clear and 25 in Wrigley and Clear and 22 in Yellowknife. 23 in Inuvik and 21 in Colville Lake. 18 in Showers in Baker Lake and 10 in Cambridge Bay. 9 in Arctic Bay and 11 in Iqaluit. A group of elders in eastern Saskatchewan is hoping that getting young people back on the land will stop what they call the destruction of our children from drugs. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
Peepaw Plains is what this group of elders says has always been called the place where life begins. Many families who refused to sign on to treaties settled in this area and raised their children here. These elders, most from Cody First Nation, say it's where the youth need to return so they're not lost. About 40 kids attended this camp, youngsters like this one, who was excited to share what he learned.
It's called chaga off a black poplar tree. We drink it and we burn it for mosquitoes.
It was really nice here this week. I learned a lot from being here.
It's this type of enthusiasm that the elders were happy to see. Madeline Whitehawk attended 3 different residential schools over 12 years and spent her career as an educator.
For a while I felt ashamed of where I was born, but as I grew older I realized that I had to come back to here I am.
Whitehawk feels Indigenous language programs need to be developed and taught by Indigenous people. The elders in this group have been meeting for several months now, worried about the loss of so many young people to drug overdoses, and decided to host their own culture camp. Pat Young from Fishing Lake came to the camp to share his knowledge. He says this ground is sacred, and the pull to this place is strong.
And this is where they always met historically to discuss important things, especially about life and preserving your way of life. For us, life is knowing our language, our culture, and our traditional way of life, and that's what really matters. And those were people that did not sign treaties that originally lived here.
With many elders passing away, this group is worried more children will lose their connection to traditional teachings. Taryn Finley Sr. is not an elder, but he took part in the camp to share what he's learned from his grandfather, showing the youth how to process a deer and prepare hides.
I'm trying to take in as much as I can. It's really keen that the youth and everybody out there listens to their elders and what they have to say, because once they're gone, everything they know goes with them, right? And then only the people who picked up are left.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Peepaw Plains.
It was a gold medal day on the mat for Nunavut at the Canada Summer Games today. Ikiluwak Avalak from Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, brought home the gold in the 52-kilogram division. Here's the moment that was streaming in many Nunavut workplaces this afternoon. The moment he won gold. He is the one wearing yellow. Here is Avalak just after he won. Now this is a big deal for him and Nunavut. It is Nunavut's first ever gold in the Canada Games and is only the second medal Nunavut has ever won at the Games. Avalak is 18 years old and was Nunavut's Male Athlete of the Year in 2020. A big congratulations to him and all of the other athletes at the Games as well. That's going to do it for our show tonight. For more news, you can visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us. Miigwech, and have a great night.